for some of these wars that we're fighting today, the answer is a lot more murky in terms of grand strategy or the big answer. What I can tell you is that at the end of the day, and I think this was true of even folks in World War II storming Iwo Jima, the Battle of the Bulge, beaches of Normandy, they're not fighting for anything, some big thing, for patriotism. At the end of the day, they're fighting for each other. You're fighting for the Marine on your left and the Marine on your right. And it's those bonds that get you through those things. My name's Zach Iscol. I am a father of 4, married to Meredith. Nobody knows what she's doing with me. And I also serve as the Commissioner for Emergency Management for the City of New York. Grew up in Pound Ridge and had a great childhood, surrounded by family, friends, played sports, wasn't really good at any of them, was always a smaller kid growing up, and had a great childhood. And then went off to high school. I went to boarding school, I went to Exeter Academy, and then from there I went to Cornell, where I played lightweight football, which is a varsity sport for guys who are smaller in stature. The reason I talk about that is I had a football coach who was the coach of the team, a guy named Terry Cullen, who was a Marine officer. And growing up, I had a number of grandparents who had served in World War II. I grew up with their stories. We often had survivors at a lot of our holiday gatherings, and was really taken by their stories, about our family stories. My dad's dad volunteered at the age of 41 to go off to World War II. His stepfather fought at the Battle of the Bulge, who I grew up with as a grandfather. And I always knew I wanted to join the military. And that football coach, Terry Cullen, who was an incredibly important mentor in my life, really encouraged me to join the Marines. After graduating from college, I was commissioned on August 11th, 2001, exactly 1 month before 9/11. 9/11 happened, and I was slated to go to the Marine Corps. I had a contract to be a pilot in the Marines. I was worried that if I went to flight school, which takes 2-3 years, I was going to miss the war. So I dropped my flight contract to go infantry. I did 1 deployment with 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, came back, immediately volunteered to go out the door with the next deploying unit, which was 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, fought in the 2nd Battle of Fallujah. On that deployment, had some amazing experiences, some terrible experiences, but I was very lucky that I had a translator named Abood Al-Kafaji, who became like a second father to me, remarkable guy, and owe my life to him. And Abood served by us, fought in Fallujah with us, wore the Marine Corps uniform in combat, and came home from that deployment. I got a call from Abood that some guys had come to his house, some guys from the Mahdi militia, that left a severed dog's head on his door and said, "You're next." Abood called me, I said, "Get to Jordan." He and his family fled to Jordan, and then began an odyssey to get him here to the States. So Abood kind of looks like Geppetto. One of my favorite photos of Abood is over on my desk over there. And he was a very kind, gentle soul. We lost him to cancer in 2011. But Abood, was fearless. He'd go out with us anywhere. There was a time where we hit an IED when he was home in Baghdad, and when he found out about it, he drove out to the scene in his car to make sure we were all okay. And he was also somebody who always made sure that we weren't insulting folks, that we were building the right relationships. We call them translators, but they're also more interpreters. Right? They help interpret what is happening more than just translating verbatim what's being said. And through that, he was not only our eyes and ears, but he also helped us really establish relationships. Mm-hmm. And those relationships kept us safe. It's sort of astonishing. A lot of other military units, U.S. units, were attacked in the town that we were stationed in, Nasr wa Salam, but my unit never was. And I think that's because of the relationships that Abood helped us establish. Right. Really, it was a very frustrating process. There was no process. I started by sending him some money via Western Union, which, so that he could get a place in Jordan. And then I started just calling people I knew in DC. And eventually I put my uniform on and I went up to the Capitol and started knocking on doors. Actually, a friend of mine who I went to high school with, who was working at the White House at the time, and so she knew a lot of the senators and their staff, and we started knocking on doors, and nobody was willing to help us. Some people would take a meeting, and then the last door we knocked on was Senator Ted Kennedy's door, and he wasn't there. We left our names, and got in a taxi cab to leave, and as we got in the taxi cab, Cindy, my friend, got her phone banged, and she got a message from Ted Kennedy's staff saying, "Is this Cindy Chang, who helped Senator Kennedy's constituents get out of Lebanon last year?" Not really sure of the details of it, but there was a big kerfuffle in Lebanon. Cindy had helped Senator Kennedy's constituents get out, and so the next message was, if it is that Cindy Chang, Senator Kennedy owes you. What can we do to help? Senator Kennedy then became very involved in this issue, and he and Arlen Specter held hearings together on this issue. And I testified at those hearings along with a few others, and that led to the expansion of something called the Special Immigrant Visa that became a program to help translators and their families immigrate to the U.S. Abood actually didn't go through the Special Immigrant Visa process. He actually was granted that day refugee status from the United Nations, which is a different immigration process. And during the hearing, Arlen Specter just said, when he found out that Abood had at that hour gotten refugee status, said, I guess we need to hold 10,000 hearings for all 10,000 of the translators to get them all here. The Marines have an ethos of you don't leave anybody behind. And we have left tens of thousands of our translators behind. We did it when we left Afghanistan, we did it when we left Iraq, and we have an obligation to those who wore our uniform in combat, who served beside us, to make sure we're caring for them and their families. So in around 2011, 2012, I started losing some of my Marines to suicide from my battalion. And we had lost about 33 Marines in combat, about half our battalion, 576 Marines were wounded in Fallujah. And we started seeing an uptick in suicides in around 2010, 2011, 2012. And, again, you talk about frustration, there was no real mechanism to get them help, right? Getting them into the VA was very hard. At the time, there was massive wait times to get people into the VA. A lot of folks at the time, mental health was not something that was as socially acceptable as it is right now. There's a lot more stigma then than there is now around mental health. And there was also just not a lot of quality mental health care providers. Some of those problems still exist today. So facing those challenges, seeing those challenges, we started a program here in New York City called the Headstrong Project to address those issues by providing veterans with world-class care that was going to be completely cost-free, zero bureaucracy, confidential, and most importantly, it was effective. And so cost-free, and really what I wanted to do is I wanted to remove any excuse a veteran could have for getting help, right? They couldn't say the wait time is too long. There's no wait time. We're going to get you into care immediately. Costs too much. There's not going to be any cost. I'm worried about the stigma or it affecting my job search. It's confidential. Nobody will know you're getting help. And it's going to be effective. And I didn't know anything about mental health at the time, but what I learned is that if you get the right help, particularly for folks with PTSD, PTSD is one of the more treatable mental illnesses, right? It's something that is the result of trauma, right? That your body and your brain actually adapt to trauma. And so it's something that is a mechanism that helps keep you safe. So it's what a lot of people don't understand with PTSD. PTSD is just the inability to turn off the fight or flight response. So when you think about some of the symptoms of PTSD, hypervigilance, sleeplessness, restlessness, quickness to anger or to react, right? Those are all things that your body's getting ready to react, right? If panic and anxiety, right? That's your heart racing, that's blood getting pumped so that you can either fight or flee. PTSD is the inability to turn that off. And what happens is, to turn it off, a lot of folks start self-medicating with alcohol, drugs. That leads to addiction issues. But the good news is in most cases, with the right treatment, you can retrain your brain through a lot of evidence-based therapies, and you can get better. So I ended up in this office because the mayor asked, right? And why he asked, I don't know, but he did. You know, I've had experiences in sort of large disasters. I was in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. I met my wife helping lead some of the efforts out on the far Rockaways, which were flooded after Hurricane Sandy. I led some of the initial response in building one of the large COVID field hospitals here in New York City at the Javits Medical Center. And so I have found myself in moments where I am managing teams and amidst a crisis or an emergency. So our agency, our job is to serve New Yorkers before, during, and after emergencies. We have 5 different bureaus. A lot of the work we do to help New Yorkers beforehand is making sure they have information through public messaging systems like Notify NYC. We also do a lot of trainings where we help people create emergency plans. We prepare emergency groups through a Strengthening Communities program. We have a volunteer group called CERT. Then we help people during emergencies, right? We go out, we respond. People are displaced from their home because of a fire. There's a water main break that's affecting local businesses. There's a coastal storm that we need to evacuate people from a neighborhood. But there's a lot that we can do during an emergency to help respond to it, keep people safe, and then also responding to the impacts, right? People lose their home to a fire, where are they going to sleep at night? If it's a lot of people, it's a big problem that needs a lot of interagency coordination. Then we do things around recovery after an emergency, helping people get back on their feet. There's a lot of programming that we run around that. And then we do a lot of work to also learn from those events, those emergencies, and then create programs to mitigate the effects of them going forward in the future. Like all of us, I think the one thing about the human experience is it's we have this fleeting moment in time that we get to be on this planet, that we get to live this life, and you have to make a decision about how you want to spend that time and what's going to be a valuable way to you of spending that time. And for me, it's service, right? There's something that to me is like very rewarding about helping other people, about being a part of the big things that are happening, whether it's a crisis of affecting our national security, whether it's an immigration crisis landing on the shores of New York City, whether it's just helping a family that's been displaced by a fire. Helping people really selfishly, it makes me feel good, right? Like I like doing it. And it's not just about, for me, it's not just about how you feel about helping other people. It's also about the people that I get to work with, right? Public servants are the best. They really are. They're people who are like-minded. They work really hard. They care deeply about these issues. And getting to work with them is a remarkable experience. But some people are moved and they want to spend their life creating art, right? And I think it's like, I think when you're young, like spend time figuring out what is going to make you happy, and spend time thinking about what you're going to be good at, and then go do that. When you are a young person, like in high school, you have this idea that life is going to be very linear. And it's not supposed to be linear. And you can never predict the way things are going to go, who you're going to meet, if you're going to run into, the impact that people are going to have on you. And I think you have to be willing to change directions, to walk through different open doors. People that come into your life, I was at the city council speaker gave her state of the city the other day, and they opened it with a bunch of religious leaders from the city giving prayers. And one of them, who's a Buddhist priest, said, everybody who's on this planet has been chosen by the divine to be here in some way or another. And I think, as you go through life, you will sort of interact with lots of different people. Some are going to be really awful human beings. Some are going to be terrible. Some are going to be mean. Some are going to be spiteful. Some are going to be really just bad actors. But, you'll also encounter a lot of great people. And all of them have something to teach you.